Here is an explanation for the answer to final exam, question number 60, in Alternative Energy Demystified, 2nd edition. If you have the printed book, please see pages 322 and 323. This question is talking about silicon photovoltaic cells, otherwise known as solar cells. You can find them at Radio Shack and other electronics stores. But you can find them individually there, and they're typically connected in solar panels to provide solar power in photovoltaic power systems. By connecting these cells in series, that is end-to-end like the links in a chain, you can increase the voltage. And by connecting them in parallel, like the rungs in a ladder, minus to minus and plus to plus, you can increase the amount of current that you get. So by combining series and parallel connections into arrays, you can get a solar battery that provides you with several volts at quite a few milliamperes, in some cases even several amperes. But one thing that you generally can't do in practice, in theory you can. You could connect thousands and thousands of these solar cells in series to get a huge voltage, like for example 100,000 volts DC for use in transmitting down a long distance power line. Theoretically you can do that, but in practice it doesn't work, and this question is just asking us why it doesn't work. Although several thousand DC volts can theoretically be obtained by connecting a great many photovoltaic cells in series, that's end-to-end like the links in a chain so that their voltages add up, this approach doesn't work well in practice. Why? Well, the reason is that each one of these cells has a little bit of resistance inherent inside it, and resistances, like voltages, add when you connect them in series. So although the resistance of an individual photovoltaic cell is relatively low, if you connect a lot of them in series, thousands of them, in order to get thousands of DC volts, you're going to have a problem, because this solar battery that you get is going to have a high internal resistance. And when you have a battery that has a high internal resistance, its voltage tends to drop when you connect a load to it, because that resistance inside the battery acts like a load itself and literally gobbles up some of the power that would otherwise go to the load. So you get a problem with fluctuating voltage, and all kinds of problems happen when you try to do that, so it really doesn't work very well. The internal resistances of the cells will add up, causing the voltage to drop significantly under load. Well, this is sort of a functional schematic diagram of a silicon photovoltaic cell. The incident radiation, usually visible light and to some extent ultraviolet, passes through this transparent glass layer and strikes this junction between the p-type silicon and n-type silicon. Now, p-type and n-type silicon are semiconductor materials that are doped, as they say. Doped, or that means D-O-P-E-D, doped. That means that additives are combined with the original silicon to get, in the case of p-type silicon, atoms that have electron deficiencies, and n-type silicon, atoms that have electron excesses. And this p-n junction right here, as it's called, between the p and the n-type, provides the interface where, when the radiation strikes it through this transparent layer, and of course the silicon has to be transparent to some degree itself so that light can get to this junction, you get about a half a volt DC in bright sunlight. Well, okay, so you connect 1,000,000 of these things in series, you get 500,000 volts DC. In theory, yes. In practice, not so much. Besides that, 500,000 volts is such a high voltage that the resulting danger that it would pose would outweigh any kind of benefit that you would get from trying to use it in an everyday environment. So once again, the correct choice here is C. The internal resistances add up. This PN junction right here is not a perfectly conducting medium. These semiconductor materials are not perfect conductors, so that when you connect them in series, their small internal resistances tend to add up, and that produces problems in practice if you think that you're going to get a high voltage source from these things directly.